The moment it all changed, Martha sat alone at her kitchen table, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the worn linoleum floor. Her fingers traced the rim of a chipped coffee mug as she stared out the window, watching leaves swirl in the gentle breeze. At 67, she felt invisible, as if the years had quietly pulled the world away from her reach. The ache of loneliness settled in her chest like a heavy stone. Once, she had been a beloved schoolteacher, full of stories and laughter. Now, the silence around her was deafening. The phone hadn't rung in days, and even her son's messages had dwindled to occasional, clipped texts. Is this what getting old feels like, she wondered, bitterness rising unbidden. Her eyes drifted to the television in the corner, where the news was just starting a live broadcast. Elon Musk, the man who had changed the way the world dreamed of space, was about to unveil his latest breakthrough with SpaceX's Starship, promising a future of reusable rockets that could make space travel more accessible than ever before. Martha's curiosity flickered. She'd followed Elon's story over the years, how he built rockets, electric cars, and even dreamed of colonizing Mars. There was something almost rebellious about his refusal to accept limits, a defiance she admired but never thought applied to someone like her. What if everything you believed about getting old was wrong? Elon's voice echoed from the screen as he spoke passionately about pushing boundaries and embracing the unknown. The word struck her with unexpected force, like a match lighting dry tinder. Could she still dream? Could she still change? Martha found herself leaning forward, the heaviness in her chest shifting into something lighter, more urgent. What if it's not too late? She whispered to the empty room. A small spark ignited inside her, a question that refused to be ignored. At that moment, she realized she wasn't ready to fade away just yet. There was still a fire inside, waiting for a reason to burn bright again. And maybe, just maybe, Elon Musk's vision was the spark she needed. She pulled out her phone and typed a quick message into an online forum dedicated to space enthusiasts. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Martha hesitated, then hit send. The words felt like a lifeline cast into the vast unknown. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the trees like a promise of change. For the first time in a long while, Martha allowed herself to hope. The life before the shift. Martha's house was filled with the quiet ghosts of a life once vibrant and full. The walls held echoes of laughter from her classroom, the smell of freshly baked cookies from Sunday afternoons with her late husband, David, and the faint scent of worn paper from the countless books she had taught from. Now, dust settled on shelves lined with memorabilia, a faded photo of her and David on their wedding day, a stack of letters from a son who was slowly drifting away, and the most precious item of all, an old rocket model built by David himself, tucked away in the attic where sunlight barely reached. Martha's mind wandered back to the years when she was younger, filled with ambition and hope. She had always dreamed of seeing the stars up close, inspired by the space race stories her father told her as a child. Teaching brought purpose and connection, but somewhere along the way, life's responsibilities and grief dulled those dreams. The passing of David 3 years ago had left a hollow in her heart that nothing seemed to fill. Her son, Mark, had grown distant, swallowed by his own life and troubles. The calls were fewer, the visits almost non-existent. Martha often felt like a relic of a bygone era, overlooked by a world obsessed with youth and progress. One memory stood out, a crisp autumn afternoon, decades ago, when David had handed her a small box wrapped in brown paper. Inside lay the rocket model he had painstakingly crafted from scraps of metal and plastic. "For your classroom," he had said with a proud smile. Something to remind everyone that there's always a way to reach higher. That rocket had been a symbol of their shared dreams and possibilities, a tangible piece of hope. Now, it gathered dust, much like the dreams Martha thought she had lost. She looked around her quiet house, feeling the weight of time pressing in. Regret mingled with loneliness. Regret for the roads not taken, for words left unsaid, for the growing gap between her and Mark. Yet beneath it all, there was a flicker of something else, a whisper of resilience, a yearning for renewal. As she climbed the narrow stairs to the attic one chilly evening, the wooden boards creaked beneath her feet. The dusty beams filtered in pale light, casting long shadows across the cluttered space. There, on a rickety shelf, sat the rocket. Martha ran her fingers over its chipped paint and fragile fins. In that moment, she felt the past and present collide. This wasn't just an old model, it was a reminder of what was still possible. She thought of Elon Musk's Starship announcement, the relentless drive that defied age and expectation. If a man could launch rockets into space, why couldn't she find a new purpose? Martha took the rocket down carefully and carried it back to the kitchen table. She set it beside her laptop and began to research. Videos of rocket launches, interviews with Elon Musk, articles about innovation and resilience flooded her screen. The images of Starship rising against the sky, overcoming failure after failure, inspired her in a way she hadn't felt in years. She imagined what it would be like to be part of something bigger again, to feel the thrill of creation and discovery. That night, Martha couldn't sleep. Her mind raced with possibilities. What if she could restore the rocket? What if this small act could lead to more? A new chapter. The next morning, she called Mark. Her voice trembled as she asked if he wanted to visit. There was a pause, then a soft yes. It was the first real connection in a long time. When Mark arrived, he seemed surprised to see her so animated, so full of energy. She showed him the rocket and shared her plans. At first, he was skeptical, but something in Martha's eyes, a spark of hope, a refusal to give in, made him stay. Together, they began to clean the rocket, sanding the rough edges, repainting the faded surface. As they worked, memories flowed, David's laughter, their family's happier times, the dreams they had all shared. For the first time in years, Martha felt the warmth of connection, bridging the gap time had created. The restoration project was more than fixing an old model, it was healing broken bonds and reclaiming lost dreams. Martha's heart swelled with quiet determination. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Doubts lingered, was she too old to learn new skills? Would Mark's renewed interest last? Could she really find purpose again? But Elon's words echoed in her mind, when something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. With each brushstroke and each moment shared, Martha felt herself coming alive. The rocket, once a forgotten relic, was becoming a beacon of hope. The house felt less like a mausoleum of the past and more like a workshop of possibilities. As days turned to weeks, Martha found herself searching for more. She read about SpaceX's trials and errors, the many Starship prototypes that failed spectacularly before success. She watched Elon Musk's interviews, captivated by his unyielding spirit and refusal to be limited by age or circumstance. Inspired, Martha began to write. She started a journal, documenting her journey, from loneliness and regret to rediscovery and purpose. Her words were raw, honest, and hopeful. She shared her story on a community forum for seniors, seeking connection and encouragement. Responses poured in, others who felt forgotten, who longed for a second chance. The dialogue ignited a small community of dreamers, proving that age was not a barrier but a backdrop for reinvention. Yet, challenges remained. Mark's life pulled him away again, and Martha faced moments of isolation. Her body reminded her of its limits with aches and fatigue. Society's whispers about slowing down echoed in doctor's appointments and casual conversations. Still, the rocket sat proudly on her kitchen table, a symbol of her refusal to fade quietly. The moment it all changed had passed, but the journey was just beginning. Martha was no longer the woman who watched the world move on without her. She was a maker, a dreamer, a woman who dared to reach for the stars once more. The spark from Elon Musk's breakthrough had ignited a fire within her, one that would burn brighter with each step she took into the unknown. And so, with a steady breath and a heart full of hope, Martha prepared to face whatever came next. The inner war Martha sat in her worn armchair, the soft glow of the television flickering across her face as she replayed Elon Musk's latest interview for the third time that evening. His voice was calm but charged with conviction as he spoke about the relentless pursuit of goals despite setbacks, about daring to push boundaries when the world insists you should stop. She felt a strange mixture of awe and envy. Here was a man decades younger than she, tackling challenges that once seemed insurmountable, fueled by a boldness she thought she'd lost. Yet as the screen went dark, the silence in her living room grew heavier, pressing against the fragile hope that had begun to bloom inside her. Was it really possible for someone her age to change? To reignite a purpose that had lain dormant for so long? The doubts surged like a tide. "Is it too late for me?" she whispered into the quiet. The ache in her knees reminded her of her body's limits. Her doctor's gentle but firm advice to slow down echoed in her mind, a stark reminder that time was not on her side. Even her son Mark's skepticism was hard to ignore. During their last visit, he had brushed off her ideas about restoring the rocket and reconnecting with the world. "Mom, you have to accept things as they are," he said, his voice tinged with frustration and pity. "You can't just start over at your age." Those words stung, slicing through the fragile resolve Martha was trying to build. Yet somewhere beneath the surface, a quiet rebellion stirred. Elon Musk's example wasn't just about rockets or technology. It was about refusing to accept limits, age, fear, failure, imposed by society or oneself. She realized that much of her struggle was an inner war between resignation and hope. Each morning she woke up to the question, should I retreat into the shadows of my past, or fight for a future still worth living? The answer was never easy. Sometimes the weight of loneliness and the physical reminders of aging felt overwhelming. Other times, the spark of possibility flared brightly enough to carry her through. One afternoon, as she sat in her favorite cafe, Martha overheard a conversation between two younger women discussing Elon Musk's Starship breakthrough. They spoke excitedly about space travel, innovation, and the future. Martha felt a pang of exclusion, as if these dreams were reserved for the young, the bold, the successful. But then she remembered Elon's words, "Failure is an option here. If things are not failing, you are not innovating enough." She realized that fear of failure had shackled her as much as the years had. The moment she embraced the possibility of failing was the moment she could truly begin. That night, she pulled out her laptop and typed a message on a social media platform dedicated to space and innovation. "I'm 67 and starting to restore an old rocket model built by my late husband. I feel like I'm too old to change, but Elon Musk's latest Starship breakthrough inspires me. Has anyone else felt this way? How do you fight the inner battle of doubt and fear?" The replies came slowly at first, then in a steady stream. Stories from others who had faced similar fears, who had rediscovered passions later in life, who had refused to be defined by age. The words offered Martha something she hadn't expected, solidarity. A sense that she was not alone in this inner war. Encouraged, she began to set small goals, learning a new skill each week related to rocket building, reaching out to her community for support, journaling her fears and triumphs. Each step was a battle, but also a victory. Yet the societal barriers remained. At the grocery store, a clerk joked, "You should take it easy, you know, at your age." Martha forced a smile but felt the sting of condescension. It wasn't just her body or her doubts, it was the world telling her to fade away quietly. But Elon Musk had taught her something invaluable, that to innovate, to grow, to truly live, she had to challenge not just her own fears but the world's expectations. One morning, after a restless night, Martha watched a clip from an old SpaceX launch, years ago, when Elon's rockets had failed spectacularly, exploding on the launch pad. Instead of giving up, Elon had doubled down, learning from each failure until success. She realized that her own setbacks, her son's doubts, her body's limitations, were not the end but the beginning of a new kind of journey. With renewed determination, Martha called Mark again, this time to ask for help with her research and restoration project. He hesitated but agreed. As they worked together, awkward at first, a fragile bond started to mend. They talked about dreams and regrets, about the future neither had dared to imagine. Martha felt the walls around her begin to crumble. The inner war was far from over, but the battle lines had shifted. No longer was she a passive spectator fading into the background. She was an active participant in her own story, inspired by Elon Musk's fearless pursuit of the impossible. The night before the restoration project's first trial run, Martha sat quietly with the rocket model on her kitchen table. The air was thick with anticipation and fear. Would this small act be enough to change everything? Could she truly break through the barriers of age, doubt, and loneliness? She remembered Elon's voice, steady and unwavering: "When something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor." And with that, Martha made a silent vow to herself. She would not let fear dictate her future. She would face the inner war with courage, fueled by hope, and the belief that it was never too late to begin again. The rocket model, once a dusty relic, now gleamed softly in the kitchen light, its faded paint restored and its fins freshly smoothed by her careful hands. This small project had become more than a hobby. It was a symbol of rebirth, a tangible spark ignited by Elon Musk's relentless drive to defy expectations and build the future. Martha knew that restoring the rocket wouldn't change her life overnight, but it was a bold first step. An act of rebellion against the creeping inertia that had threatened to swallow her whole. She set up a makeshift workspace near the window, arranging tools and parts with surprising dexterity. Each small adjustment, each careful brushstroke, was a victory over doubt and fear. As she worked, memories of her late husband David flooded back, his passion for tinkering, his belief in reaching for the stars, and the quiet encouragement he had always given her to chase dreams, no matter how far-fetched. Martha realized that in some ways, she was finishing a story they had started together. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood about her project. At first, the reactions were mixed. Some neighbors whispered skepticism. "Isn't she too old for this kind of thing?" they muttered behind closed doors. Others, however, were quietly impressed by her determination and the gleam of purpose returning to her eyes. Mark, still hesitant, surprised her by offering to help. One afternoon, he showed up with a laptop full of tutorials on rocket engineering and a smile that hinted at hope. Together, they dove into research, learning about the latest SpaceX Starship technology, the engineering feats, and the countless failures Elon Musk had faced before success. "You know," Mark said one evening, "Elon Musk didn't build rockets because it was easy. He built them because he believed the impossible was just the next challenge." Martha nodded, feeling a surge of pride. This wasn't just about rockets. It was about resilience, about refusing to let age define her limits. Every day, Martha committed to small acts that built momentum. She started walking daily, strengthening her body to keep pace with her ambitions. She joined an online forum where others shared stories of late-in-life reinvention. She even tentatively drafted a blog, sharing her journey in her own words, hoping to inspire others who felt stuck or forgotten. The act of writing gave her a voice she thought had been silenced. One chilly morning, Martha decided to take her project beyond the kitchen table. She visited the local makerspace, a community workshop filled with tools, gadgets, and people of all ages tinkering and creating. The first step inside felt daunting. The hum of machines and chatter reminded her how much she had to learn. But the welcoming smiles of the other makers quickly put her at ease. A friendly volunteer named Jake showed her around, explaining how to use soldering irons and 3D printers, technologies Martha had only heard about in passing. With Jake's encouragement, she began to assemble parts for a small prototype of a rocket engine, inspired by the principles Elon Musk had shared about reusable Starship designs. Each misstep, burned fingers, misaligned parts, was a lesson. When frustration threatened to overwhelm her, she remembered Elon's quote, "Failure is an option here. If things are not failing, you are not innovating enough." That mantra became her shield against self-doubt. Back at home, Mark's presence was a balm. Their conversations grew deeper, moving beyond technology to dreams, fears, and memories. One evening, he confessed, "I'm sorry I doubted you, Mom. I didn't realize how much you needed to feel this alive again." Martha smiled, feeling the fragile threads of their relationship strengthen. This was not just a project, it was a healing. The restoration of the rocket model was the first tangible step, but it symbolized so much more. It was Martha reclaiming her identity, her purpose, and her right to dream. Inspired by Elon's relentless pursuit of the Starship, Martha decided to host a small community event, inviting neighbors and friends to share in her journey. The turnout surprised her. People of all ages came, curious and supportive. Some brought their own stories of late reinvention, others simply cheered her on. Martha spoke openly about the challenges of aging, loneliness, and fear, and how Elon Musk's example had shown her that limitations were often self-imposed. The room was filled with nods and quiet applause. That night, as she lay in bed, Martha felt something she hadn't felt in years, a deep, abiding hope. She knew the path ahead would have obstacles, but the small change she had made, choosing to act despite fear, had transformed her world. She wasn't just restoring a rocket, she was launching herself into a new life. Elon Musk's Starship was designed to be reused, to rise again and again despite fiery crashes and setbacks. Martha understood now that she too could rise, time and again, fueled by courage and the unyielding belief that it was never too late to reach for the stars. The morning light streamed through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow on the rocket model that now stood proudly on Martha's workbench. Its once faded surface gleamed with fresh paint, and every detail reflected hours of patient restoration. But more than the rocket, it was the change in Martha herself that marked a breakthrough, quiet yet profound, like the gentle lift of a starship escaping Earth's gravity. Months of small victories had led to this moment, but the real breakthrough was deeper, Martha's rediscovery of her own worth and power to shape her future. It started with an unexpected email. One evening, while checking her inbox, Martha saw a message from a local news outlet intrigued by her story. They wanted to feature her journey, a 67-year-old woman reigniting her passion inspired by Elon Musk's bold Starship vision. Martha hesitated at first, the familiar voice of doubt whispering that she wasn't extraordinary, that her story was too small. But then she remembered the countless times Elon had faced skepticism and failure, only to keep pushing forward. She replied yes, opening a door she hadn't dared to approach before. The reporter arrived a few days later, a young woman named Jessica with bright eyes and genuine warmth. She listened intently as Martha shared the story of the rocket model, her late husband David's legacy, the struggles with loneliness, and the spark Elon Musk's relentless drive had ignited in her. Cameras rolled as Martha demonstrated the restoration process and explained her plans for future projects. When the story aired, Martha's quiet neighborhood was suddenly buzzing. Calls and messages poured in from strangers moved by her courage to embrace change at an age many considered too late. A local community center invited her to speak at events, and online forums filled with comments of support and shared experiences. One message stood out, a reply from a woman named Clara, who had lost her husband recently and felt paralyzed by grief and fear. "Your story gave me permission to hope again," Clara wrote. Martha's heart swelled with an unfamiliar warmth, the knowledge that her journey was touching others, that she was not alone, and neither were they. The breakthrough was not just personal, it was collective. Yet, with the surge of attention came vulnerability. Martha found herself standing in front of crowds, speaking about dreams and resilience, a far cry from the quiet life she had led. Doubts crept back. Was she ready for this? Could she sustain the courage? On a particularly difficult day, when aches reminded her of her age and exhaustion threatened to overwhelm, Martha returned to her kitchen, staring at the rocket. The model was a symbol, but the real work was inside her, breaking through years of self-doubt, isolation, and fear. Inspired by Elon Musk's words about the importance of failure and persistence, she embraced the discomfort as part of growth. Then came the moment she had feared and hoped for. Mark, her son, reached out with a surprising request. "Mom, "I want to help with your blog," he said over the phone. "I want to understand more about what you're doing, and maybe share some of my own story." Martha's voice caught with emotion. The walls between them were crumbling. Together, they began to write posts that intertwined their journeys, a mother reclaiming purpose, a son reconnecting through vulnerability. Their story resonated with many, bringing renewed closeness and healing long overdue wounds. One evening, Martha received a package in the mail. Inside was a letter from a SpaceX engineer who had seen her story online. He included a small component used in prototype Starship rockets and a note, "Keep building. Age is no barrier to innovation." Tears blurred her vision as she held the tiny part, a tangible connection to the dream that had sparked her transformation. The breakthrough was not a single event but a series of moments, each fragile, each powerful. Martha realized she had been waiting for permission to matter again, and now she was giving it to herself. The old fears and doubts remained, but they no longer ruled her. In the quiet of her kitchen, surrounded by tools and memories, Martha whispered a promise, to keep reaching, keep building, keep rising. Just like the Starship, designed to soar higher with every attempt, she was ready to face whatever came next. The new legacy. Martha sat quietly in the soft evening light filtering through her living room window, the restored rocket model resting gently on the coffee table before her. The house, once filled with shadows of regret and silence, now felt alive with possibility. The journey she had embarked upon, sparked by a chance encounter with Elon Musk's unyielding vision, had transformed more than just an old hobby. It had rekindled a fire within her, a new legacy she was beginning to understand and embrace. For years, Martha had believed that aging meant fading into the background, her story slowing to a close. The loss of David, the drifting distance from Mark, and the physical reminders of time had conspired to convince her that her best days were behind her. But now, sitting in the gentle hum of her home, she realized those beliefs were the real barriers, not age, not circumstance. Martha's journey was more than a personal awakening, it was a declaration against invisibility and despair. She thought back to the words she had scribbled in her journal months ago, "I was never too old. I was just waiting for permission to matter again." And in this quiet moment, she understood that the permission she sought had come from within. She was the author of her own narrative, capable of rewriting what it meant to grow older. Her blog had grown beyond anything she could have imagined, becoming a vibrant community of seniors sharing stories of courage, creativity, and reinvention. Emails arrived daily, tales of rekindled passions, newfound friendships, and breakthroughs inspired by her words. Martha felt a profound sense of connection and responsibility. She was no longer alone, and neither were they. Mark's renewed presence in her life was a source of healing. Their shared blog posts, candid conversations, and collaborative projects bridged years of silence and misunderstanding. The fragile threads of family had been rewoven with care and hope. One afternoon, Martha received an invitation that both surprised and humbled her. A local senior center asked her to lead a workshop titled, "Dreams After 60, Building Your New Legacy." Standing before a room of attentive faces, she shared her story, of loss, fear, and the transformative power of daring to begin again. Her words carried the weight of lived experience and the lightness of hard-won hope. The room filled with nods, smiles, and even tears. In the weeks that followed, Martha's life was busier and richer than ever. She balanced her restoration projects, writing, and community engagements with care, mindful of her body's needs but unwilling to surrender her newfound purpose. Her home, once a sanctuary of solitude, buzzed with visitors eager to learn, share, and dream alongside her. Martha's legacy was no longer just the echo of her past but a living, breathing force, a testament to resilience and possibility. She often thought of Elon Musk's Starship, a marvel of engineering designed to rise again after each setback, pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible. Martha's own journey mirrored that relentless ascent, each failure, each doubt met with renewed determination. The rocket model on her table was more than a restored artifact. It was a symbol of transformation, a beacon for others who believed they were too old to matter. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Martha sat with Mark on the porch, watching the sky deepen into twilight. "I used to think my story was ending," she said softly. "But now I see it's just beginning. Maybe that's the real breakthrough, the courage to keep dreaming, no matter the years behind us." Mark smiled, squeezing her hand. "You showed me that it's never too late. That legacy isn't just what we leave behind, it's what we keep building every day." Martha smiled back, the warmth of family and purpose glowing in her chest. She knew the road ahead would have challenges, but she faced them with a heart unburdened by doubt, fueled by hope, and anchored in the knowledge that age was not the end, but a new beginning. The future was hers to shape. And as the stars began to twinkle overhead, Martha whispered a quiet thanks to the spark that had ignited it all, a visionary who dared to reach for the impossible, and a woman who dared to do the same. The unexpected ally. Martha had never imagined that her small restoration project and newfound public presence would lead her to a chance meeting that would change everything. It began one crisp autumn morning when she received an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read simply, "Inspired by your story." The message was from Linda Reynolds, a retired aerospace engineer who had worked on early rocket designs in the 1970s. Linda explained that she had come across Martha's blog and found it deeply moving. She saw in Martha a reflection of her own struggles with aging, loss, and the persistent desire to create. For years, Linda had felt sidelined after retiring, her skills and passion gathering dust like the tools in Martha's garage. Now, reading about Martha's journey, she felt a flicker of hope, and a longing to reconnect with her own dreams. They agreed to meet at the local library's community room, a neutral space where two women from different generations and experiences could share stories and perhaps build something new. When Martha walked into the room that afternoon, she found Linda already waiting, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and eyes sparkling with warmth and curiosity. The first conversation was tentative but electric. They spoke of rockets and reinvention, of failures and breakthroughs, of the ways society often tells older adults to fade quietly into the background. For Martha, Linda's technical knowledge was a treasure trove. For Linda, Martha's courage and openness were a beacon. Over the next weeks, their meetings became a ritual. Together, they pored over old engineering manuals and cutting-edge designs inspired by Elon Musk's Starship, blending the wisdom of past experience with the excitement of new innovation. Linda introduced Martha to concepts Martha hadn't encountered before: advanced materials, propulsion systems, and the delicate art of balancing risk and precision. Martha brought fresh perspective, fueled by the spark of youthful curiosity she thought was long gone. Their collaboration wasn't just about rockets, it was a profound act of reclaiming purpose and dignity in a society that often overlooked them. One afternoon, as they worked side by side in Martha's garage-turned-lab, Linda paused, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted a tiny component. "I never thought I'd feel this alive again," she admitted quietly. "It's like Elon Musk said, when something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. For us, that something is this, our passion, our story, our future." Martha smiled, recognizing the truth in those words. Their partnership grew beyond the technical. They shared stories of heartbreak and healing, Linda's struggle with loneliness after her husband's passing, Martha's fractured relationship with Mark, the battles each had fought against invisibility and self-doubt. Together, they forged a bond that was both sisterhood and mentorship, a testament to the power of connection at any age. Encouraged by Linda's support, Martha took another bold step. She proposed a community workshop series focused on empowering older adults to explore STEM fields and creative projects. With Linda's help, they secured funding from a local grant and partnered with the makerspace that had welcomed Martha months before. The first workshop was a mix of excitement and nerves. Participants ranged from retirees curious about technology to seniors eager to reclaim hobbies they'd set aside decades ago. Martha and Linda led hands-on sessions, guiding attendees through basic engineering principles, prototype building, and the thrill of problem-solving. The room buzzed with energy, laughter, questions, and the satisfying click of parts fitting together. One attendee, a former teacher named Jim, shared how the workshops rekindled his long-forgotten love of model airplanes. Another, Clara, whom Martha had connected with earlier, brought her knitting group, eager to see how creativity and science could intertwine. As the workshops gained momentum, Martha's blog chronicled their progress, capturing the growing community of older dreamers and doers. Messages poured in from across the country, people inspired to start their own projects, to defy the limits imposed by age and fear. Elon Musk's Starship, once a distant marvel, had become a symbol not just of space exploration but of personal transformation. One evening, as Martha and Linda packed up their tools, Martha reflected on how far they had come. "I never expected to find an ally like you," she said softly. Linda chuckled. "Neither did I. But maybe that's the secret: when you stop waiting for permission and start reaching out, the universe surprises you." The breakthrough was no longer just about restoring rockets or rebuilding relationships, it was about building a new legacy of courage, connection, and unyielding hope. Martha knew the road ahead would still be filled with challenges, but with Linda by her side, and the community they had sparked behind them, she felt ready for anything. Just like Elon Musk's vision of a future where humanity reached beyond the stars, Martha's vision was one where age was not a barrier but a launching pad, where every ending was simply the start of something new. Martha stood at the threshold of her garage, now transformed into a workshop humming with possibility. Around her, sketches of rocket parts and handwritten notes peppered the walls, a mosaic of her evolving dream. Today was different. Today, she would take a leap of faith, inspired by Elon Musk's audacity and her own rekindled courage. It had taken months of painstaking work, late nights studying propulsion systems, countless phone calls with Linda, and the steady encouragement of Mark to reach this point. The prototype engine they had painstakingly assembled, a small but functional model designed to demonstrate reusable rocket technology, sat on the workbench, gleaming with promise. Martha's hands trembled slightly, but her resolve was unwavering. She carefully connected the prototype to the power source, the room filled with a low hum as the engine came alive. The smell of heated metal and the flicker of a small flame sparked something deep within her. It wasn't just the machine starting, it was the realization that she was no longer a passive observer in her own life. She was an inventor, a creator, a force capable of shaping her destiny. Her phone buzzed, a message from Mark: "Proud of you, Mom. You're literally launching into the future." Martha smiled, the warmth of family and friendship anchoring her as she faced the unknown. This leap was more than a technical trial, it was symbolic. It was a defiance of every "too old" whispered doubt, a direct challenge to the limits society placed on those in their golden years. Just as Elon Musk had revolutionized space travel by refusing to accept the status quo, Martha was rewriting what it meant to age, with curiosity, resilience, and relentless hope. The test went better than expected. The engine held steady, firing cleanly for several minutes before powering down safely. The workshop erupted in cheers, Linda clapped enthusiastically, and Mark video called to witness the moment from afar. It was a small victory, but monumental in its meaning. News of their achievement spread quickly through the online community Martha had nurtured. Messages poured in from seniors who saw in Martha's leap a reflection of their own hidden dreams. Encouraged, Martha and Linda proposed their next ambitious step, building a fully functional scale model of a reusable rocket. It was a daunting challenge, one that required new skills, more resources, and the bravery to embrace failure as a stepping stone. The months that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Fundraising campaigns launched, crowdfunding efforts galvanized supporters near and far, and local businesses stepped up to offer materials and expertise. Martha found herself at the heart of a movement, a network of older adults reclaiming innovation and purpose. The process was humbling and exhilarating. Days blurred into nights filled with calculations, prototypes, and test runs. Every setback, a cracked casing, a misaligned nozzle, was met with laughter, lessons, and renewed determination. Through it all, Martha's blog captured the journey with honesty, the frustrations, the triumphs, and the unshakable belief that age was not a barrier but a strength. One chilly evening, as Martha sat reviewing blueprints with Linda and Mark, a moment of quiet reflection settled over the group. "You know," Linda said softly, "this is more than just a project. It's a legacy, proof that passion doesn't retire." Martha nodded, feeling the truth of those words deep in her bones. She thought of David, her late husband, and how proud he would be to see her embracing the future with such fierce love. As the scale model took shape, Martha's confidence blossomed. She began speaking at conferences, senior centers, and online forums, not just about rockets, but about transformation, courage, and the power of daring to leap. Her story resonated far beyond her small town, touching hearts and inspiring action across the country. But the greatest leap of all was internal. Martha had shed the weight of fear and invisibility that had once bound her. She no longer waited for permission to matter. She was living proof that the human spirit, when fueled by passion and purpose, could soar at any age. One spring morning, as the team prepared for their first public demonstration of the scale model's launch, Martha stood beneath the wide blue sky, the crisp breeze carrying the scent of possibility. Around her, the community gathered, neighbors, friends, strangers brought together by the story of a woman who refused to give up. As the engine ignited and the model lifted into the air, a collective cheer rose. Martha felt tears prick at her eyes, not from the roar of the engine, but from the realization that this moment symbolized something far greater: hope reborn, limits shattered, and the unyielding promise of new beginnings. Elon Musk's vision of reusable rockets was no longer just a distant dream in the stars, it had become a metaphor for a life reclaimed. Martha's leap of faith had ignited a future where age was not the end, but the launch pad. And as the rocket soared, so did she, into a new legacy defined by courage, connection, and the endless pursuit of the impossible. The sun had barely risen over the quiet town when Martha sat alone at her kitchen table, the soft light casting long shadows across her notes and blueprints. Despite the momentum she and her team had built, a familiar weight pressed down on her chest, the creeping shadow of doubt. It was a feeling she knew too well, one that whispered, "Who are you to take on such a challenge? You're too old. You don't have the energy. You're not enough." The world outside moved quickly, celebrating youth and innovation as if they were inseparable. Martha felt the sting of invisibility in boardrooms, social media threads, and even in casual conversations. Sometimes, it was the words people didn't say that hurt the most, the dismissive glances, the polite but condescending smiles. The recent success of their scale model launch was a bright spot, but it also drew scrutiny. Critics questioned the viability of older adults tackling complex engineering projects. Some labeled their efforts as quixotic or sentimental, suggesting that resources should go to serious professionals. Martha grappled with these voices, but it was the internal battle that threatened to unravel her resolve. That morning, as she sipped her coffee, a news clip flashed across her tablet, a headline about a young engineer being hailed as a visionary prodigy. The contrast hit hard. Where do I fit in? Martha wondered. Is there truly room for someone like me in this future? Just then, a familiar notification popped up, a message from Linda. "Meet me at the workshop. We need to talk." Martha's heart lifted slightly. Linda had become her anchor through storms of uncertainty. At the workshop, Linda greeted her with a reassuring smile. "You're not alone in this," she said firmly. "Doubt is part of the journey, Elon Musk faces it every day. Remember when SpaceX nearly went bankrupt? When they lost rockets? They kept pushing because they believed in the impossible." Martha nodded, drawing strength from Linda's words. Together, they reviewed their plans, identifying areas where they could improve and anticipating challenges ahead. But beyond strategy, Linda reminded Martha of something more important: the power of mindset. "We're rewriting the narrative," Linda said. "Not just for us, but for everyone who's ever been told they're too old, too slow, or too late. This is about proving that passion and persistence have no expiration date." Inspired, Martha decided to confront doubt head-on. She scheduled a live stream on her blog, inviting followers to join a candid conversation about fear, ageism, and resilience. The response was overwhelming. Comments poured in from seniors sharing their own struggles with invisibility and self-worth. Younger viewers expressed admiration and a desire to support. Some skeptics challenged her, but Martha welcomed the dialogue, believing that transformation comes through engagement, not silence. The live stream became a turning point. Martha realized that doubt, while daunting, could be a catalyst rather than a barrier. It humanized her journey, connecting her more deeply with a community bound by shared hopes and fears. She began to see that Elon Musk's example was not about invincibility but about embracing failure and uncertainty as essential steps toward innovation. With renewed clarity, Martha and Linda refined their project timeline, balancing ambition with realistic pacing to protect their energy and health. They reached out to local universities, inviting students and professors to collaborate, bridging generations and expertise. The infusion of fresh ideas energized the team, blending youthful innovation with seasoned wisdom. One afternoon, during a brainstorming session, Mark joined them with surprising news. A regional science foundation had offered a grant to support their work, impressed by their commitment and community impact. The funding was modest but significant, a tangible vote of confidence that lifted spirits. As the weeks passed, Martha found herself growing more comfortable in her role as a leader and mentor. She spoke at conferences, sharing not only technical insights but also the emotional landscape of aging and transformation. Her message resonated widely, that courage, curiosity, and connection could defy even the harshest doubts. Yet, the challenge of doubt was never fully gone. On difficult days, when fatigue and frustration crept in, Martha revisited a small framed quote she kept on her desk, Elon Musk's words, "When something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor." That reminder grounded her, fueling the persistent spark that had lit her path. In time, Martha came to understand that doubt was not her enemy but a companion on the road to breakthrough. It tested her resolve but also deepened her wisdom and empathy. By facing doubt openly, she became a beacon for others navigating their own uncertainties. As the project advanced toward its next milestone, Martha stood at the threshold of a new chapter, not just in her work, but in her life. She had stepped beyond fear and invisibility into a space of empowered possibility. And in doing so, she embodied a truth as vast as space itself, that the human spirit, when nurtured with hope and daring, can overcome any gravity that seeks to hold it down. The workshop buzzed with quiet energy as Martha, Linda, and their growing team gathered around the latest prototype. The room smelled of metal, solder, and determination, mingling with the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Today marked a turning point. Not just in the project but in Martha's evolution. They were ready to tackle the complex challenge of integrating a heat-resistant shielding system, essential for a reusable rocket's safe return through Earth's atmosphere. Months ago, such a task would have felt insurmountable, but now it was a puzzle to be solved with patience and passion. Elon Musk's approach echoed in Martha's mind: embrace failure, iterate quickly, and never lose sight of the mission. Linda adjusted her glasses and began explaining the latest research on thermal tiles, materials capable of withstanding extreme temperatures yet light enough to not weigh down the craft. The team listened intently, a mix of seasoned retirees and eager young collaborators bridging decades of knowledge. Martha's role had shifted from hesitant beginner to inspired leader, guiding discussions and encouraging fresh ideas. The diverse group shared stories of past careers, their eyes bright with renewed purpose. Jim, the former teacher turned hobbyist engineer, brought samples of innovative insulating materials he had researched. Clara, once an artist and now a makerspace regular, sketched designs for modular tiles that could be replaced individually, simplifying maintenance. As ideas flowed, Martha realized this was more than engineering, it was a community reclaiming relevance and creativity. Later, as she reviewed notes alone, Martha found herself reflecting on the personal transformation beneath the technical triumphs. She remembered the early days, the loneliness, the doubts, the ache of time lost. Now, each breakthrough was a testament to the power of resilience and connection. A notification popped up on her phone, a new message from Mark. Watching you lead this is incredible. You're not just building rockets, you're building hope. Martha smiled, the warmth of family and friendship filling her heart. That evening, she revisited a video of Elon Musk speaking at a conference. His voice was steady, filled with urgency and optimism. If you get up in the morning and think the future is going to be better, it is a bright day. Otherwise, it's not. Those words became her mantra, a beacon during long nights of trial and error. The team faced setbacks, tests that failed, materials that didn't perform, designs that needed reworking. But with each challenge, they grew stronger, more inventive, and more united. Linda often reminded them that innovation was a process of persistence, not perfection. One afternoon, a breakthrough came unexpectedly. Jim's insulating material, combined with Clara's modular design, passed rigorous stress tests, offering a practical solution that balanced durability and ease of repair. The workshop erupted in cheers and applause, a moment of pure joy that Martha treasured deeply. She felt the spark of innovation not just in the materials or mechanics but in the spirit of collaboration and shared purpose. News of their progress spread through Martha's blog and social media channels, inspiring others who had once felt sidelined by age or circumstance. Messages arrived from across the country, stories of seniors taking up new hobbies, launching personal projects, and reconnecting with long-dormant dreams. Martha knew their work was bigger than a rocket, it was a movement. One evening, as the team gathered to celebrate their milestone, Martha looked around the room, the faces glowing with pride and possibility. She thought about the journey from a lonely garage filled with faded dreams to this vibrant community of creators. Elon Musk's Starship was no longer just a symbol of space exploration, it was a metaphor for human potential, resilience, and the refusal to accept limits. Martha raised her glass in a quiet toast. To the future, she said, her voice steady and full of hope. To the courage to begin again. And to the spark that lights the way, no matter our age. As glasses clinked and laughter filled the air, Martha felt a deep peace settle within her. She had discovered that innovation was not reserved for the young or the famous but belonged to anyone brave enough to dream and determined enough to act. The rocket they were building would someday soar beyond the skies, but the true breakthrough was the legacy they were creating here on Earth, a testament to the power of reinvention, community, and unyielding hope. The post detailed their recent success integrating the heat-resistant shielding into their prototype, and the response was overwhelming. Messages from strangers, old friends, and even a few local reporters flooded in, each one echoing the same sentiment: "You inspire me." It was a phrase Martha never expected to hear at this stage in her life. For years, she had felt invisible, her accomplishments tucked away in dusty photo albums and quiet memories. Now, her story was reaching people beyond her small town, resonating in homes, community centers, and online spaces across the nation. That evening, a knock at the door startled her. On the porch stood Sarah Jennings, a young reporter from the local newspaper. "Hi, Martha," she said with a warm smile. "I've been following your journey, and I'd love to do a feature story." Martha hesitated, the familiar fear of exposure creeping in. But then she remembered Elon Musk's words about embracing challenges and decided this was another step toward breaking through. The interview was more than a recounting of technical details, it was an opportunity to share the emotional core of Martha's transformation. She spoke openly about the loneliness of aging, the sting of doubt, and the joy found in reclaiming purpose. Sarah captured not just the facts but the spirit. A narrative of hope, resilience, and the courage to defy expectations. When the article ran the next week, it sparked a ripple effect. Calls came in from local community groups, senior centers, and even nearby schools, all eager to learn more about Martha's project and the workshops she and Linda had started. Invitations arrived for Martha to speak at events and participate in panels discussing aging, innovation, and the power of lifelong learning. The newfound visibility brought both excitement and challenges. Some skeptics dismissed the media attention as a novelty, while others questioned the feasibility of their project. Martha learned to navigate these waters with grace, focusing on the positive impact rather than the criticism. Linda reminded her, "Every story we tell is a seed planted. Not everyone will see it the same way, but some will grow from it." One particularly memorable invitation came from the local community college, which asked Martha to co-teach a course on practical engineering for seniors. The idea of stepping into a classroom filled with eager learners was daunting, but Martha embraced it as another chance to build connection and inspire. The course began with a diverse group of students, retirees curious about technology, hobbyists eager to expand their skills, and even a few younger adults interested in cross-generational collaboration. Martha and Linda created a curriculum that balanced theory with hands-on projects, fostering an environment where failure was not feared but celebrated as a step toward discovery. Watching her students grapple with challenges and celebrate breakthroughs, Martha felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She saw reflections of her own journey in their struggles and triumphs, reinforcing the belief that transformation was possible at any age. The course quickly became a highlight of the college's offerings, attracting media coverage and drawing attention to the growing movement of older adults embracing STEM fields. Amid these successes, Martha faced a personal test. Mark's work demands had increased, limiting his availability and leaving Martha to shoulder more responsibility for the project. At times, fatigue and loneliness crept back in, threatening to dim her enthusiasm. But the community they had built rallied around her, offering support, encouragement, and a reminder that she was not alone. One evening, as Martha prepared notes for a lecture, a message appeared from an unexpected source, a direct tweet from Elon Musk himself. It was brief but powerful: "Keep pushing boundaries. Age is just a number. The future belongs to those who dare." Martha's heart soared. The acknowledgement was not just validation but a spark, a reminder that the spirit of innovation and courage transcended fame and fortune. Inspired, she redoubled her efforts, channeling Elon's words into every facet of her work. As spring turned to summer, Martha found herself invited to a regional innovation summit. The event brought together entrepreneurs, scientists, educators, and visionaries of all ages. Martha's keynote address was met with standing ovations, her story a beacon of hope and proof that the "too old" narrative was a lie. She spoke with vulnerability and strength, weaving her personal journey with lessons learned from Elon Musk's relentless pursuit of the impossible. After the speech, she was approached by a philanthropist interested in funding expansions to their workshop and community programs. The resources promised new opportunities, better equipment, outreach to underserved populations, and scholarships for older learners. The chapter closed with Martha standing on the stage, the crowd's applause echoing in her ears, feeling the weight of every step she had taken to arrive there. From a lonely kitchen table to the spotlight, she had become a voice heard around town, and beyond. Martha realized that her greatest legacy was not the rocket parts or prototypes but the spark of inspiration she had ignited in countless hearts. Elon Musk's Starship had launched her into the future, but her own courage had propelled her even further, into a life redefined by purpose, connection, and boundless possibility. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The unexpected setback. The warm glow of the afternoon sun filtered through the workshop's dusty windows as Martha carefully reviewed the latest test results. The reusable rocket prototype had come so far, its systems integrated, shielding tested, and propulsion fine-tuned, but today's data told a different story. A critical component of the landing mechanism had failed during simulation. The prototype's descent had been unstable, the delicate balance of weight and thrust thrown off, causing it to wobble dangerously. Martha's chest tightened with a familiar ache: setback. She had come to expect these moments, knowing they were part of innovation's brutal dance, but each one still stung like a personal defeat. Linda joined her at the workbench, her face a mix of concern and determination. "We'll figure this out," she said firmly. Elon Musk faced dozens of rocket failures before SpaceX succeeded. We're in good company. The reminder offered some solace, but Martha couldn't shake the heavy feeling of doubt creeping back in. The past months of triumph suddenly felt fragile, as if one misstep could unravel everything they had built. That evening, Martha sat alone in her living room, the silence wrapping around her like a cold blanket. She thought about David, her late husband, and the dreams they had shared, dreams she had put aside for years, believing time had slipped through her fingers. The weight of those lost years pressed on her heart. Why was this setback hitting so hard? Was it just about the rocket, or was it a deeper fear, that after fighting so long, she might still fail? She pulled out her journal, the pages filled with sketches, quotes, and reflections from the journey. One entry caught her eye, a note she had scribbled months ago from an Elon Musk interview: "Failure is an option here. If things are not failing, you are not innovating enough." The words resonated, a call to embrace imperfection as part of progress. With a deep breath, Martha reached out to Mark and Linda. Together, they decided to host a brainstorming session the next day, inviting all team members to tackle the problem collaboratively. The next morning, the workshop was alive with energy and ideas. Diverse voices offered perspectives from engineering tweaks to software recalibrations. They dissected the failure from every angle: material stress, aerodynamic design, timing sequences, refusing to let discouragement take hold. Jim suggested revisiting older designs for insights, while Clara proposed testing smaller-scale models to isolate variables more effectively. Martha marveled at the collective wisdom blossoming in the room, a community bound by shared purpose and resilience. Over the following weeks, they experimented tirelessly, adjusting the rocket's balance, fine-tuning sensors, and redesigning the landing gear. Each test brought new data, some promising, others more challenges. Fatigue tugged at Martha, but the team's spirit kept her going. She remembered Elon Musk's relentless optimism amid SpaceX's early failures and held that image close. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Martha received a message from a young engineer she had never met. The note was brief but heartfelt: "Your story reminds me that innovation isn't about age or background. It's about daring to try. Keep going." The message reignited her fire. In that moment, Martha understood that setbacks were not just obstacles but invitations to deepen commitment and creativity. They were proof that the journey mattered more than the destination. Finally, after weeks of trial and error, the team prepared for a crucial new test. The landing mechanism had been redesigned with improved stability controls, and the prototype was ready for simulation. As Martha activated the test, the rocket descended smoothly, its systems responding perfectly. The room held its breath as the model touched down gently, without wobble or falter. Cheers erupted, tears of relief and joy sparkling in Martha's eyes. The victory was more than technical, it was a triumph of perseverance, community, and unwavering hope. That night, as she lay in bed, Martha reflected on the unexpected setback that had nearly shaken her resolve. She realized that every failure was a stepping stone, a lesson etched into the path of progress. Elon Musk's journey had shown her that greatness was forged in the fires of challenge, and she was ready to keep pushing forward. In the quiet of the night, Martha whispered to herself, "I am not defined by failure. I am defined by the courage to rise." The setback had become a breakthrough, a testament to the indomitable spirit that propelled her and countless others toward futures yet imagined. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the workshop, illuminating walls adorned with sketches, blueprints, and photographs of every step in their journey. Martha stood by the entrance, watching as a steady stream of people arrived, old friends, new volunteers, curious neighbors, all drawn by the energy and promise that had grown beyond their small town. The failure with the landing mechanism had been a harsh lesson, but it had also sparked something even more profound, a deeper sense of community. Martha realized that innovation was not just about individual genius or solitary struggle, it was about connection, collaboration, and shared purpose. The project had become a magnet for people seeking to reclaim meaning in their lives, to build something bigger than themselves. Linda welcomed newcomers with her usual warmth, pairing veterans with fresh faces so skills and stories could flow freely. There was Robert, a retired aerospace technician who eagerly shared decades of experience, and Jasmine, a college student studying materials science, whose enthusiasm was contagious. Together, they formed a tapestry of generations and backgrounds united by curiosity and hope. One afternoon, Martha gathered the team around the large wooden table for a meeting. "We're not just building a rocket," she said, her voice steady and passionate. "We're building a future where no one feels too old, too forgotten, or too afraid to dream. This is about proving that purpose and community can transform lives." The room hummed with agreement. They brainstormed ways to expand outreach, hosting workshops at senior centers, partnering with schools, and creating online forums for sharing ideas and encouragement. Martha saw the power of these connections ripple outward as participants found renewed confidence, skills, and friendships. Tyen's brutal dance, but each one still stung like a personal defeat. Linda joined her at the workbench, her face a mix of concern and determination. "We'll figure this out," she said firmly. Elon Musk faced dozens of rocket failures before SpaceX succeeded. "We're in good company." The reminder offered some solace, but Martha couldn't shake the heavy feeling of doubt creeping back in. The past months of triumph suddenly felt fragile, as if one misstep could unravel everything they had built. Stories poured in from people who had begun their own projects, writing memoirs, learning to code, starting clubs, all inspired by the collective energy. Martha thought back to Elon Musk's approach, his relentless belief in building teams that could innovate fearlessly. She understood now that her project wasn't just a homage to his spirit but a living embodiment of it, adapted to the needs and strengths of their unique community. Late one evening, Martha received a phone call that made her heart leap. It was from a national foundation offering a significant grant to support community-driven innovation initiatives. The foundation's director had read about their journey and saw it as a model for empowering older adults and fostering intergenerational collaboration. The funding meant they could upgrade their facilities, purchase advanced tools, and launch educational programs on a larger scale. The news electrified the workshop. It was validation not only of their technical achievements but of the human impact they were creating. As plans took shape for the expansion, Martha felt a profound gratitude. She thought of every person who had walked through the workshop doors, each bringing their unique story and contribution. Together, they had created a space where age was not a barrier but a bridge, a place where dreams could be rekindled and futures rewritten. One afternoon, Martha visited a local senior center to speak about their project. The room was filled with faces lined by time but bright with curiosity. She shared not just the technical details but the emotional journey, the doubts, the setbacks, and the triumphs. She talked about Elon Musk's fearless pursuit of the impossible and how it had inspired her to redefine what was possible in her own life. After her talk, a woman named Gloria approached her, tears glistening in her eyes. "I thought my best days were behind me," Gloria said softly. "But listening to you, I feel like I have a second chance. Maybe I'll start that art class I've been dreaming about." Martha smiled, feeling the warmth of connection. Moments like these were the true victories. Back at the workshop, the team celebrated milestones big and small, successful tests, new recruits, community events. They shared meals, laughter, and stories, weaving a fabric of support that buoyed them through challenges. Martha noticed how the project had transformed her relationships as well. Mark, once distant due to work pressures, now joined regularly, drawn in by the sense of belonging. Their conversations deepened, and old wounds began to heal. One evening, Martha sat quietly in the workshop, surrounded by blueprints and tools, feeling the hum of possibility. She thought about the path that had brought her here, from isolation and doubt to community and purpose. Elon Musk had sparked the initial fire, but it was the power of connection that had fanned it into a sustaining flame. In that moment, Martha understood a vital truth: innovation was as much about heart as it was about science. It was about building bridges between people, generations, and dreams. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the workshop in a golden glow, Martha whispered a promise to herself and to everyone who had joined her journey. "We will keep building, not just rockets, but a world where everyone matters, where age is celebrated, and where hope is always within reach." And with that, the future felt brighter than ever. The triumphs of the past months were vivid in her memory. The team's growing success, the community's support, the national grant that had injected new energy into their workshop. Yet beneath those bright moments lurked an uninvited companion, doubt. The voice inside her whispered questions she hadn't faced fully before. Was she really capable of leading this ambitious project? Could she keep pace with younger, more experienced engineers? Was her age a hidden barrier, an invisible line she couldn't cross? These fears gnawed at her confidence, threatening to dim the flame that had carried her so far. As she moved through the morning routine, the doubts settled more firmly, blending with exhaustion and the lingering ache of past losses. The familiar ache in her knees reminded her of physical limits she could no longer ignore. The thought of slowing down was both tempting and terrifying. At the workshop, the team sensed Martha's mood shift. Linda approached gently. "Martha, we all have moments like this. Remember Elon's words. When something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. You're not alone." The reminder helped, but Martha knew this was a deeper struggle, a test of her resolve beyond the technical challenges. Later that day, during a team meeting, a young intern voiced concerns about the project timeline, questioning whether the ambitious goals were realistic given their resources and experience. The room grew tense. Martha took a breath and responded honestly. "I understand the doubts. I have them too. But innovation isn't about certainty, it's about courage in the face of uncertainty. We move forward because we believe in what's possible, not because the path is easy." Her words resonated, but the doubts lingered like shadows at the edges of her mind. That evening, Martha sought solace in an old habit, watching Elon Musk interviews and talks, hoping to find strength in his unyielding confidence. She found herself captivated by a video where Musk spoke about the importance of embracing failure and risk. "If you're not failing, you're not innovating enough," he said. "Fear can't be your guide." The message was a bomb and a challenge. Martha realized that doubt was not a sign of weakness but a natural part of growth. The question was how to face it without surrender. Inspired, she decided to share her struggle openly with the team the next day. Vulnerability, she knew, could be a bridge, not a barrier. In a candid conversation, Martha admitted her fears, the weight of responsibility, the physical limitations, the fear of being seen as too old. The room responded with empathy and support. Team members shared their own moments of insecurity and resilience. Linda suggested mindfulness and self-care practices to manage stress. Robert reminded everyone of the power of persistence over perfection. This exchange deepened the team's bonds, transforming doubt into a shared challenge rather than an individual burden. Martha also began exploring ways to adapt her role to honor her strengths while acknowledging her limits. She delegated more technical tasks to trusted team members and focused on strategic vision, mentorship, and community engagement. This shift allowed her to conserve energy and play to her unique gifts, wisdom, empathy, and leadership. As weeks passed, Martha found a new rhythm, a balance between pushing forward and honoring her well-being. She took regular walks, practiced meditation, and nurtured her relationships outside the workshop. The doubts didn't vanish, but they lost their power to paralyze. One afternoon, a breakthrough in the prototype's performance arrived, a successful series of tests confirming the improved landing system's stability. The celebration was sweetened by the knowledge that progress had come through collective resilience, not solo perfection. Martha reflected on the journey and felt a profound gratitude for the lessons learned from doubt. She understood now that courage was not the absence of fear but the choice to act in spite of it. Elon Musk's relentless drive was fueled not by invincibility but by a willingness to embrace uncertainty and failure as part of the path. Martha whispered to herself, "I am enough. My experience, my courage, my heart, they are all I need." The chapter closed with Martha stepping outside the workshop into a golden sunset, feeling the doubts as a part of her story but no longer its master. She was ready to keep building, her rocket, her community, and her new life, one brave step at a time. The workshop buzzed with renewed energy as summer deepened, the air thick with anticipation and the scent of fresh paint and metal. Martha moved through the space with a quiet confidence, the doubts that had shadowed her now tempered by a growing sense of purpose and belonging. The prototype was nearing a critical milestone, a full-scale simulation of the Starship's reusable landing sequence. The stakes felt higher than ever. News of their progress had reached beyond the town's borders, attracting the attention of a nearby university's aerospace department. Dr. Evan Roberts, a respected professor and veteran engineer, visited the workshop with a team of students eager to collaborate. Martha welcomed the partnership, seeing it as an opportunity to expand their reach and deepen the project's impact. The university team brought fresh ideas and technical expertise, while Martha's group offered practical experience and a heart-driven approach to innovation. Together, they embodied a powerful fusion of youth and wisdom. In planning meetings, the two groups worked through complex challenges, optimizing propulsion efficiency, refining materials for heat resistance, and enhancing telemetry systems. Martha observed the dynamic with pride. This intergenerational collaboration was more than technical, it was a living example of the future she envisioned, where age was not a limitation but a strength. Outside the workshop, community interest swelled. Local media covered the story, highlighting Martha's journey and the growing coalition of learners, makers, and dreamers rallying around the project. Invitations poured in for Martha to speak at conferences, town halls, and educational forums. Each appearance was a chance to share not just their technical achievements but the deeper message, that transformation was possible at any stage of life. One evening, as Martha prepared for a keynote address at a regional innovation summit, she reflected on how far she had come. From the lonely kitchen table where she had first dared to dream again, to this moment standing on a stage filled with eager listeners, her journey was a testament to resilience and the power of reaching beyond perceived limits. The speech wove together personal stories, lessons from Elon Musk's fearless mindset, and a call to action for all to embrace possibility regardless of age or circumstance. The audience responded with enthusiasm, many sharing their own stories of renewal and hope. After the summit, a young woman approached Martha, her eyes shining with admiration. "You've shown me that it's never too late to chase my dreams," she said. "Thank you for being a light." Moments like these reinforced Martha's belief in the ripple effect of courage and connection. Back at the workshop, the collaborative team prepared for the simulation test. The atmosphere was electric, nerves mingled with excitement. As the countdown began, Martha felt her heart pound not with fear but with anticipation. The prototype launched virtually, its systems engaging with precision. Data streamed in, confirming the stability of the landing mechanism, the efficiency of the propulsion, and the durability of the heat shield. When the simulation concluded successfully, cheers erupted throughout the room. Tears filled Martha's eyes as she embraced Linda and the team. This was more than a technical win, it was proof that dreams fueled by passion and persistence could defy any odds. That night, Martha sat beneath a canopy of stars, the vastness of the sky a reminder of endless possibility. She thought of Elon Musk's vision of colonizing Mars, of humanity reaching beyond the horizon, and she felt connected to that grand ambition in a deeply personal way. Her journey was a microcosm of that spirit, a testament to the power of daring to dream and the courage to act. As the stars twinkled overhead, Martha whispered a promise to herself and to all who dared to believe: the future is ours to build, no matter our age, no matter the obstacles. We will reach beyond the horizon. The chapter closed with Martha gazing upward, her heart full, ready to embrace whatever the next challenge would bring. The rocket was no longer just a project, it was a symbol of renewal, connection, and boundless possibility. The soft hum of the workshop filled the air as Martha reviewed the final preparations for the upcoming full-scale prototype test. The months of relentless effort, the late nights, the endless troubleshooting, the emotional roller coaster, were culminating in this pivotal moment. The team had grown into a family, united by a shared vision and the belief that their work mattered far beyond the walls of their small town. Just as Martha was about to leave for the evening, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from the headquarters of SpaceX, a direct invitation to present their project and journey at an exclusive innovation summit hosted by Elon Musk himself. Martha's breath caught. She reread the message, the words blurring with disbelief and joy. The invitation was a recognition of their perseverance, creativity, and the profound message their work carried, that innovation and purpose have no age limit. The news spread quickly through the workshop. The team erupted in cheers and hugs, their excitement electric. Linda clasped Martha's hands tightly. "This is it, Martha. This is the moment we've been working toward." The days leading up to the summit were a whirlwind of preparation and reflection. Martha crafted her presentation, determined to honor the journey, the struggles, the setbacks, the victories, and the community that had made it all possible. She felt the weight of responsibility, but also the thrill of opportunity. When the day arrived, Martha stepped into the sleek SpaceX headquarters, a place humming with energy and futuristic ambition. She was greeted warmly by the staff and soon found herself backstage, waiting to share her story with a room filled with engineers, innovators, and thought leaders. When her turn came, Martha walked onto the stage, the spotlight warm against her skin. She began with the moment that had sparked everything, a time when she felt forgotten, too old, and powerless to change. She spoke of her late husband's dreams, the loneliness that had followed, and the spark ignited by Elon Musk's fearless pursuit of the impossible. She shared the raw truth of setbacks and doubts, the moments when giving up seemed easier than pressing on. But she also spoke of the power of community, resilience, and the courage to try. Her words resonated deeply, drawing nods, tears, and applause. Elon Musk himself listened from the front row, his expression thoughtful and engaged. After the presentation, Martha had the chance to speak with him one-on-one. Elon's words were both encouraging and challenging. "Your story is a testament to what it means to innovate with heart," he said. "Age, fear, failure, these are just obstacles to be overcome. Keep pushing boundaries." The conversation fueled Martha's resolve. She realized that their project was not just about building a better rocket but about inspiring others to redefine their own limits. Returning home, Martha felt a renewed sense of purpose. The invitation from SpaceX was more than an honor, it was a call to amplify their message and impact. The community gathered once again, energized by the recognition and ready to push forward with even greater determination. The chapter closed with Martha standing beneath a sky full of stars, knowing that their journey was far from over. The future was wide open, filled with challenges to face and horizons to reach. With Elon Musk's words echoing in her heart, she whispered, "We're just getting started." The SpaceX summit had passed, leaving behind a whirlwind of inspiration and new connections. Yet amid the excitement, a deeper question began to surface in her mind: what legacy was she truly building? The rocket was more than metal and engineering. It was a symbol of transformation, hope, and the refusal to be defined by age. But how could she ensure this spirit endured beyond her own involvement? That evening, Martha pulled out an old photo album from a dusty shelf. Pictures of her younger self smiled back, vibrant, ambitious, and full of dreams that life had postponed but never extinguished. She turned to a faded image of her and her late husband, James, standing beside a model rocket he had once built for their son. The memory stirred a bittersweet ache. James had dreamed big but had never seen his dreams fully realized. Martha felt a surge of determination to carry forward not only her own aspirations but his as well. She reached for a notebook and began jotting ideas, mentorship programs, community scholarships, partnerships with schools, to create pathways for others to discover their own passions and potential. She envisioned a legacy that nurtured curiosity and courage in every generation. The next morning, Martha shared her vision with the team. Their eyes sparkled with enthusiasm, each member eager to contribute. Linda proposed organizing regular workshops for seniors interested in technology and innovation. Robert suggested hosting annual Innovation Days to showcase projects and inspire local youth. Jasmine and the university team offered to help design curricula and outreach programs. Together, they sketched a roadmap to sustain their impact long after the rocket had launched. Over the following weeks, the workshop transformed into a hub of activity not just for building but for teaching and inspiring. Martha took on the role of mentor and storyteller, sharing her journey openly to encourage others to embrace change and pursue their passions. She visited schools and senior centers, weaving the story of their project with lessons about resilience and possibility. As the community grew stronger, Martha noticed changes in herself, a deepening sense of peace and fulfillment. The fear of fading had been replaced by the joy of giving back, of planting seeds that would flourish in unexpected ways. One afternoon, a letter arrived from a young woman named Emily, who had attended one of Martha's talks. Emily shared how Martha's story had inspired her to pursue engineering, a field she had once thought closed to her because of financial and family challenges. She expressed gratitude for the mentorship programs that had supported her growth. Martha's heart swelled with pride and hope. The ripple effect was real, extending far beyond what she had imagined. At a community gathering to celebrate the launch of the mentorship initiative, Martha stood before a crowd of diverse ages and backgrounds. She spoke with conviction, "Legacy is not just about what we leave behind, it's about what we build together today. It's about opening doors, lighting fires, and believing in the power of transformation at every age." The room erupted in applause, the energy vibrant and alive. Later that evening, Martha reflected on the journey that had brought her here, from isolation and doubt to leadership and impact. Elon Musk's relentless pursuit of what seemed impossible had sparked her courage, but it was the connections and community that had shaped her legacy. As she looked around the workshop filled with laughter and ideas, she realized that the future was being crafted not by one person but by many hands and hearts united by hope. The chapter closed with Martha standing beneath the stars, whispering a promise: "This is just the beginning. Our legacy will be measured not by rockets alone, but by lives transformed and dreams realized." The night felt endless, filled with possibility and the quiet power of dreams taking flight. The summer sunlight filtered through the workshop windows, casting long shadows over the blueprints and tools scattered across the tables. The atmosphere had been charged with excitement for weeks. The team was preparing for the first physical test flight of their improved reusable rocket prototype, a moment they had worked tirelessly to achieve. Martha felt the familiar mix of anticipation and nerves, tempered now by hard-earned confidence and a sense of shared purpose. But as the day of the test approached, an unexpected challenge struck. Just 2 days before the scheduled launch, a critical supplier notified them of a delay in delivering a key component for the landing system. The news hit the team like a thunderclap. Without the part, the entire test would have to be postponed, potentially setting the project back months and straining the limited budget. The weight of the setback pressed heavily on Martha's shoulders. Memories of past failures flickered uncomfortably in her mind. Doubt and frustration threatened to unravel the fragile momentum they had built. At a tense team meeting, voices clashed between those urging patience and those advocating for creative alternatives. Martha listened carefully, then spoke with calm resolve. "Setbacks are part of any journey worth taking," she said. Elon Musk didn't build SpaceX without failures. Countless times, the team faced obstacles that seemed insurmountable. What matters is how we respond. We adapt, innovate, and keep moving forward. Inspired by her words, the team sprang into action. They brainstormed ways to redesign the landing system to use available materials without compromising safety or function. Engineers from the university offered to help source alternative components, while Linda coordinated outreach to local suppliers. Late into the night, sketches and prototypes covered the tables as the team worked feverishly to overcome the obstacle. Martha felt the familiar ache of exhaustion but also a renewed spark of determination. The setback was not a dead end but a detour, a chance to test their ingenuity and resilience. 2 days later, the redesigned component arrived just in time for a preliminary test. It wasn't perfect, but it worked well enough to move forward. The team breathed a collective sigh of relief, their spirits lifted by the hard-won victory. On test day, the workshop buzzed with nervous energy. As the prototype lifted off, cameras and sensors captured every moment. The rocket soared higher than ever before, the reusable landing system engaging smoothly. When it touched down with minimal impact, cheers erupted. Tears streamed down Martha's face as she embraced the team. The setback had transformed into triumph, a reminder that progress was rarely linear but always possible with perseverance. That evening, Martha sat quietly under the vast night sky, the stars shining with steady brilliance. She thought about the challenges ahead, the unknowns, the fears, and the moments when giving up might seem easier than pressing on. But she also knew that within every setback lay the seeds of growth and strength. Elon Musk's journey was a testament to this truth, a relentless drive to learn, adapt, and innovate despite obstacles. Martha whispered into the night, "Setbacks don't define us. How we rise does." The chapter closed with a renewed sense of hope and resolve, the workshop filled with the quiet hum of dreams that refused to be grounded. After the triumph of the prototype's successful test flight, a quiet energy settled over the team, one of anticipation and new possibilities. Martha stood near the window, the soft hum of activity around her blending with a peaceful clarity inside her heart. The journey had been arduous, marked by doubts, setbacks, and moments where giving up felt like the easier path. But here, in this moment, everything felt different. The rocket was no longer just an invention, it was a symbol of transformation, hope, and the power to redefine what was possible at any stage of life. In the weeks following the test flight, the team focused on refining their design, incorporating lessons learned, and preparing for the next phase, a live demonstration in front of industry leaders, educators, and community members. The event was more than a showcase. It was a declaration that age, fear, and past failures were not barriers to innovation. Martha found herself reflecting on the profound impact their work had already made. From lonely evenings spent doubting her worth to inspiring young people and seniors alike, the project had become a beacon of possibility. Invitations poured in for Martha to speak at universities, senior centers, and tech conferences, each chance to share her story amplifying the message that transformation was within reach for everyone. One afternoon, as the team gathered for a final rehearsal before the demonstration, Martha addressed them with heartfelt gratitude. "This is more than a rocket launch," she said. "It's a celebration of courage, resilience, and the belief that no matter where we are in life, we have the power to reach beyond our limits." The crowd that gathered for the demonstration was diverse, young and old, curious and skeptical, familiar and new faces drawn by the promise of witnessing something extraordinary. As the countdown began, Martha felt the weight of the moment but also a lightness born from years of struggle and growth. The rocket lifted off, engines roaring, ascending steadily into the clear sky. The reusable landing system engaged flawlessly, guiding the craft back to Earth with precision and grace. Cheers erupted from the crowd as the rocket touched down, a perfect conclusion to a journey of transformation. After the demonstration, Martha mingled with attendees, hearing stories of inspiration and renewed hope. A senior woman shared how Martha's journey had encouraged her to enroll in a coding class she'd long postponed. A young boy spoke of dreaming to become an engineer. These moments underscored the ripple effect of courage and connection. That evening, Martha stood outside the workshop, the sky painted in hues of pink and purple. The stars began to emerge, each one a distant beacon in the vast universe. She thought of Elon Musk and his relentless pursuit of the unknown, of the risks taken and the barriers broken. But most of all, she thought of herself, the woman who had dared to dream again, who had fought through fear and doubt to create something meaningful. She whispered into the night, "This is our new dawn. Our story is not one of endings but of beginnings. No matter our age, our past, or our fears, we have the power to reach for the stars." The chapter closed with Martha stepping into the warm light of the workshop, ready to continue building, inspiring, and living with fearless purpose. The future was wide open, and she was ready to meet it head-on. The new legacy. The night sky stretched endlessly above the small town, stars shimmering like distant promises of the future. Martha sat on the porch of her workshop, the familiar creak of the wooden swing beneath her a comforting rhythm against the quiet hum of the evening. The journey that had once seemed impossible, reigniting her passion, building a reusable rocket prototype, inspiring a community, and even standing alongside the innovators at SpaceX, had come full circle. The project was no longer just a technical achievement, it was a testament to resilience, courage, and the refusal to be defined by age or circumstance. As the cool breeze whispered through the trees, Martha reflected on the transformation she had undergone. Once burdened by regret and loneliness, she had found purpose and connection. The spark lit by Elon Musk's fearless example had grown into a flame that illuminated not only her own path but the paths of countless others. She thought of the mentorship programs now flourishing, the young minds eager to dream big, and the seniors who had discovered new talents and passions. The workshop had become a sanctuary of growth and possibility, a place where barriers crumbled and new legacies were born. Martha's phone buzzed softly in her lap. A message from Linda appeared: "We've been invited to present at the National Innovation Conference next month. They want to hear about our journey, and what comes next." A smile spread across Martha's face. The invitation was more than recognition, it was an opportunity to continue sharing their story, to inspire even more people to believe in their own power to change and create. That night, Martha penned a letter to the community that had supported her every step of the way. She wrote with honesty and warmth, inviting them to join her in embracing the future together. "We were never too old," she wrote. "We were simply waiting for permission to matter again. Now, we create that permission for ourselves and for each other." As dawn broke over the horizon, Martha rose with a renewed sense of purpose. She stepped into the workshop, where the team was already bustling with energy, ready to tackle the next challenge. The rocket prototype stood proudly in the center. A symbol not just of technology but of hope and transformation. In the coming months, their work would continue to evolve, reaching new heights and touching new lives. Martha felt a profound gratitude, for the setbacks that taught resilience, for the community that fostered growth, and for the spark of courage that had ignited a new chapter. As she looked toward the future, she carried with her a powerful truth: that legacy is not built on what we have done alone but on the lives we touch and the hope we inspire. The chapter closed with Martha stepping outside, the morning sun casting a warm glow over the workshop and the world beyond. With eyes bright and heart full, she whispered, "This is our new legacy, one of fearless hope, boundless possibility, and the courage to keep dreaming, no matter the age." The sky was vast, the future limitless, and Martha was ready to soar. The day began like any other, sunlight slipping through the slats in the blinds, the scent of fresh coffee wafting through the kitchen, and the quiet hum of the town outside Martha's window, but something felt different, like a chord being slowly strummed in the background of her thoughts, waiting for a resolution that had never come, and just after breakfast, it arrived. An envelope, thick, aged at the corners, addressed by hand, sitting squarely in her mailbox like a message from another life, and as soon as she saw the name on the return address, her hands trembled, her breath caught, because it was from her estranged daughter, Elise, the one she hadn't spoken to in over a decade, the one whose absence had created a hollow in her heart she never thought could be filled. And with shaking fingers she opened it, the letter inside simple but heavy with emotion. Saying things like, "I've been following the news about your rocket project, Mom, and I didn't know how to reach out before, but I'm proud of you," and at the end, just 4 words that knocked the air from Martha's lungs: "Can we talk soon?" For a long moment, she sat in silence, holding the letter as if it might dissolve in her hands, the memories flooding in. Fights left unresolved, words spoken in anger, years of distance filled with silence and stubbornness, and beneath it all, the pain of wanting to reconnect but not knowing how, not knowing if it was too late. But now, here it was, a crack in the door, a chance to face the unfinished part of her life that even rockets and reinvention couldn't quite mend, and she knew what she had to do. That night, after hours of rehearsing what she might say, how she might begin, she picked up the phone and dialed the number written at the bottom of the letter, each ring stretching like a lifetime until finally, a soft, cautious voice answered. Mom," and Martha's voice cracked when she said, "Elise," because there it was, the weight of time, of missed birthdays and unsent letters, collapsing into that one word, and for the next hour, they talked, haltingly at first, like tiptoeing across thin ice. But slowly the thaw began, apologies spilling out in both directions, confessions of pride, grief, regret, and love weaving their way between tears and quiet laughter, and by the end of the call, Martha felt lighter, not because everything was fixed, but because a door had opened again, one she feared had closed forever. In the days that followed, they spoke more, short calls, text messages, even a few old photos Elise sent of her life in Seattle, including one of a young boy with sandy hair and a mischievous grin, and when Martha saw it, she gasped, because the resemblance was uncanny, like looking at her late husband's childhood pictures, and Elise wrote beneath the image, "This is your grandson, Caleb. He's 8. He knows about you. He wants to meet you." Martha's heart swelled and shattered all at once, overwhelmed by the enormity of what was unfolding, not just a reunion, but a restoration, a second chance to be something she thought she had lost forever, a mother, a grandmother, a part of a family again, and when Elise offered to fly out for a visit, Martha said yes before the sentence was even finished. The day they arrived, the entire workshop paused as Martha greeted them at the airport, her arms trembling as she wrapped them around Elise, the two women clinging to each other through tears, and when she knelt down and looked Caleb in the eyes, something ancient and sacred passed between them, recognition, perhaps, or destiny, and he smiled shyly before throwing his arms around her neck, whispering, "Hi Grandma," and in that moment, Martha felt the rocket of her life lift off once again, not from the launch pad behind the workshop, but from deep within her chest. Over the next week, Elise and Caleb stayed in the guest room at Martha's home, the days filled with storytelling, shared meals, and long walks through the town that now proudly displayed banners with words like "Innovation lives here," and "Age is just a number," and Caleb, curious and sharp-eyed, spent hours in the workshop, asking questions about the rocket, about heat shields and telemetry, about how old you had to be to build something that could touch the sky, and Martha laughed as she explained the systems, letting him sit at the controls of the simulator, the same one she had once stared at in fear, and now here was this child, this miracle, pressing buttons with the eager belief that nothing was out of reach. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, casting everything in gold, Martha and Elise sat outside with mugs of tea in hand, the silence between them no longer tense but tender, and Elise said quietly, "I spent years thinking you had forgotten me, or that you didn't care anymore," and Martha's eyes welled up as she replied, "And I thought I'd failed you, that I didn't know how to fix what had broken between us." And the words hung there for a moment, raw and real, before Elise reached across and took her hand, saying, "But maybe we were just waiting for the right moment to try again," and Martha nodded, the lump in her throat making it impossible to speak, because she knew it was true, everything had led to this, every misstep, every late-night breakdown. Every bolt tightened in the belly of that rocket had carved a path not just to the sky, but back to the people she loved. That night, she wrote in her journal, something she hadn't done since the beginning of the project, and as the pen moved across the page, she captured not just technical notes or goals, but a truth that had unfolded slowly, like the rocket's arc through the atmosphere. "All this time, I thought I was rebuilding myself for a future I had missed, but I see now I was building a bridge back to the people who mattered most," and as she closed the journal, she felt at peace. The week passed quickly, and the day Elise and Caleb flew home was filled with tight hugs and promises to visit again soon, this time with longer stays, more time together, maybe even summer trips or holidays, and as they disappeared beyond the airport security gate, Martha stood still for a long time, her hand pressed to her chest, feeling the pulse of something that had returned. Not just family, but the sense that no matter how far we drift, love is always waiting to welcome us home. That evening, as the stars reappeared above the town, the same stars she had looked to for guidance and courage in her darkest moments, Martha walked alone to the edge of the workshop's launch pad, the metal glinting under the moonlight, and she whispered a quiet thank you, to the journey, to the losses that shaped her, to Elon Musk's relentless defiance of limitations, and most of all, to herself, for having the strength to rise, to try again, to love again. The sky stretched wide above her, full of constellations and the quiet hum of the future unfolding, and she smiled, knowing that the most powerful launch of all hadn't been the rocket, but the transformation inside her heart. The day of the final launch began not with fanfare, but with silence. The kind of sacred, still quiet that blankets the world when something important is about to happen, and Martha felt it in her bones the moment she woke up, the same way a seasoned sailor can feel a shift in the tide before the waves begin to roll, and as she stepped into her kitchen and poured her morning coffee, she stared out the window at the field beyond the town's edge, where the completed reusable rocket now stood tall against the sky, gleaming under the morning sun like a monument to every trial, every breakthrough, every impossible dream that had brought her to this moment, and she whispered to herself, "We made it," not as a declaration of victory but as a quiet acknowledgement of the road walked, the people lost and found, and the version of herself she had reclaimed along the way. Today's launch was symbolic more than scientific. It was a full-circle moment, a public display not only of engineering success, but of transformation, and as the news cameras arrived, students set up their STEM booths, and families unfolded lawn chairs in the surrounding field, Martha moved through it all with the calm presence of someone who had already lived the most important part of the story, and now simply wanted to honor it. Linda arrived early, her ever-reliable clipboard in hand and eyes misty with emotion, while Robert managed the technical checks and Jasmine led a group of wide-eyed middle schoolers through the control station, each of them getting a turn to arm the rocket on the digital panel, their faces glowing with the belief that the future was not something far away, but something they could touch, shape, and one day launch themselves. As the countdown drew closer, Martha took a quiet moment alone inside the workshop, the place where it had all started. The dusty garage, once filled with silence and doubt, now transformed into a sanctuary of purpose and innovation, and she ran her hand along the edge of the original prototype shell, still mounted on the wall, its scorched paint and dents preserved like a battle-worn metal, and she smiled at the thought of that first night, fumbling with parts, wondering if she had lost her mind, not knowing that she was, in fact, finding her soul again. On the table sat the letter she had written the night before, sealed and marked, "To be opened when I'm gone, but not too soon," and next to it, a flash drive filled with files, blueprints, videos, and her journaled thoughts throughout the project, all of it meant to be shared freely, so others could pick up where she left off, so that even in absence, her story could continue sparking new beginnings. At exactly noon, the crowd grew quiet, a sea of eyes turning to the sky, to the towering rocket, to the small control platform where Martha now stood with Caleb at her side, his hand tucked into hers, his mouth open in awe, and she leaned down to whisper, "Want to help me start the countdown?" And he nodded, thrilled, his voice loud and clear as he began, 10, 9, 8, and the crowd joined in, voices rising together, not in farewell but in celebration. As one rang out, the rocket ignited, flames and smoke blooming beneath it as it lifted from the pad, soaring into the air with a power that brought tears to Martha's eyes, not because it was beautiful, though it was, or because it worked flawlessly, though it did, but because that launch wasn't just a rocket climbing into the sky, it was her fear, her grief, her doubt, her old age, all of it burning off in the fire, replaced by something bigger than any of it, belief, hope, legacy. The rocket arced gracefully, the reusable landing system engaging on cue, and when it touched back down minutes later with perfect precision, the field erupted in cheers, clapping, hugs, and even a few whoops of joy from teenagers who had once doubted whether some old lady could really build a ship that flew. Martha looked around at the sea of faces, young and old, familiar and new, and saw in them the truth that had taken her a lifetime to learn. That the most revolutionary thing a person can do is believe in their own relevance, to say, "I still matter," and then to prove it. She didn't need to say much at the microphone afterward, her presence said everything. "Thank you," was all she said at first, pausing as the applause faded. This rocket was never just about space. It was about time, how we spend it, how we waste it, and how we reclaim it. I spent a long time thinking my time had passed. But what I've learned is that time doesn't leave us behind. Sometimes, we just need to catch up to who we really are. There was a hush, the kind that wraps around a moment you know you'll remember for the rest of your life, and then she added, "If you're watching this and you think it's too late for you, it's not. You're not done. You're just waiting for permission to matter again. So give yourself that permission. The launch window is still open. As she stepped down, she was met by Elise, who pulled her into a long, tearful hug, whispering, "You did it, Mom," and behind her stood Caleb, now holding a small model rocket in his hands, the same one she had given to Elise decades ago, now passed back through time, like a promise being fulfilled. That evening, after the crowd dispersed and the reporters left and the sky turned to a soft lavender dusk, Martha stood once again on her porch, watching the workshop lights flicker off one by one as her team packed up the last of the equipment, and for the first time in years, she felt no rush, no pressure, no heavy weight of something unfinished. She had done what she came here to do, not just build a rocket, but reignite her own life, heal her family, and inspire a generation to rethink what aging looks like, what purpose can feel like, and how it's never too late to chase something wild, impossible, and beautiful. The wind picked up gently, carrying with it the smell of summer grass and warm earth, and she closed her eyes, breathing in the peace that only comes after a journey fully lived, and somewhere deep inside, she heard the voice that had once changed everything, the Elon Musk quote she had scribbled in a notebook all those months ago: "Some people don't like change, but you need to embrace change if the alternative is disaster." And now, she smiled, not just because she had embraced change, but because she had become it. The stars blinked to life one by one, as they always did, but tonight, they didn't feel so far away. They felt close, reachable, familiar. And with her heart full, her legacy blooming, and the silence no longer empty but complete, Martha whispered to the sky, "I'm not fading, I'm just getting started." The days after the final launch were quieter than Martha had expected, not in the sense of loneliness. No, her house was often full now, between phone calls from Elise, surprise visits from Caleb, and invitations to speak at conferences, but quiet in a deeper, more intimate way, like the hush that comes after a great symphony has ended, the silence filled with echoes of everything that had come before, and though people kept telling her she was a hero, a pioneer, an inspiration, Martha found herself doing something strange. She slowed down, not because she had run out of energy or ambition, but because, for the first time in decades, she didn't feel like she was running away from anything, not from regret, not from fear, not from time itself, and in that stillness, something unexpected began to bloom, a question, small at first, then persistent: what now? Not in a desperate way, not the old what now. That came from boredom or grief or feeling lost, but in a gentler voice, one that sounded more like curiosity than crisis, and so she leaned into it, that question, letting it guide her like stars had guided sailors long before rockets ever pierced the sky. She started her mornings not with deadlines or to-do lists, but with walks through her town, waving to neighbors, stopping to smell flowers she had ignored for years, and sometimes sitting in the park just to listen to the sound of life continuing, children laughing, dogs barking, wind moving through the trees, and each day she wrote a little, not about rockets, but about memory, forgiveness, aging, love, and the raw miracle of choosing to begin again after everyone else thinks your story is over. Word spread fast, of course. Martha had become something of a local legend, and soon, others began showing up at the workshop not just to see the rocket, but to talk, to share, to ask her what it had all meant, and she listened, really listened, to the man who had lost his job and didn't know how to start over, to the woman who had raised 3 children and now felt invisible, to the couple who had put off their dreams for retirement only to find fear waiting in place of freedom, and in each face Martha saw a part of herself, saw the quiet desperation people carry when they believe they are too old, too late, too far gone to matter anymore. One afternoon, after giving a short talk at the local high school about reinvention in the second half of life, a student approached her, a girl no older than 16 with large glasses and an awkward slouch, and she said, "Everyone talks about young people needing role models, but maybe we need to see that it's okay to not have it all figured out. Even when we're older. Especially then." That sentence stayed with Martha for days, echoing in her thoughts as she walked through her home, sat in her workshop, or cooked dinner with Elise and Caleb on weekends, and it made her realize something profound. Maybe her legacy wasn't the rocket, or the speech, or even the mentorship programs. It was the permission she gave others, through her own life, to remain unfinished, evolving, human. And so she started something new, not a company, not a non-profit, not a startup with a logo or funding pitch, but a space. She called it Second Light. It was just a room above the library at first, then 2 rooms, then a full building donated by the town, and its purpose was simple: to provide people over 50 with a place to experiment, build, dream, and learn, not because they needed to get rich or famous, but because creation was a right, not a privilege, and nobody should age out of wonder. There were no rigid rules, no age ceilings, no requirements for resumes or past credentials, just curiosity, courage, and coffee, which flowed endlessly in the common room where strangers became co-creators, and retirees tinkered with solar panels beside teenagers writing code, and single mothers taught woodworking to former lawyers rediscovering the joy of their hands. Martha didn't lead it. She nurtured it. She showed up, swept the floors, fixed broken chairs, shared stories when asked, but mostly she listened, making space for others to realize that the fire in them wasn't gone, only sleeping. She watched as a 72-year-old woman built a podcast studio to interview forgotten artists. She helped a retired bus driver design a robotic arm to help stroke survivors brush their teeth. She even stood by with tears in her eyes as a man who had never once shared his poetry stood up during a Friday night, Second Voice event and read words he had written during his cancer recovery. Second Light became more than a building. It became a movement. Journalists came. Books were written. Cities called asking how to replicate it. Elon Musk even retweeted a clip from a speech Martha gave at an elder entrepreneurship panel with the caption, "Age is just the speed at which you burn." Martha's burning brighter than ever. But Martha didn't care about the press anymore. She cared about the people. About the woman who told her, "My grandkids now believe I'm cool." About the man who said, "I thought it was over for me, but now I'm teaching others how to use AI." And most of all, she cared about what she saw in Caleb's eyes when he visited. Awe, not just for rockets or technology, but for his grandmother, who had taught him that growing older wasn't shrinking, but expanding in new directions. On her 70th birthday, the town held a celebration, not for her age, but for her legacy, and they called it the Launch of the Heart Festival, complete with drone shows, music, open workshops, and messages from people around the world who had been touched by her story. And when asked what she wanted to say to the crowd, she stood on the small stage, her gray hair pinned back with a silver clip Caleb had picked out, and she said simply, "I used to think my best years were behind me. But what I've learned is that life doesn't peak. It deepens. If you're breathing, you're still becoming. If you're standing, you're still launching. And the only thing you're ever too old for, is giving up." The crowd cheered, not because the words were fancy, but because they were real. And that night, as fireworks exploded overhead and music filled the air, Martha didn't feel like a legend or a speaker or even a builder. She felt like herself, Martha, daughter, mother, widow, grandmother, friend, beginner, believer, builder of things both mechanical and invisible. She sat on the edge of the stage as the music faded and the stars began to appear, one by one, and Caleb climbed into her lap, sleep already tugging at his eyes, and as she held him close, she looked up at the sky, not with longing, but with gratitude, because she knew she had already touched something bigger than space. She had touched lives, sparked courage, and proved to herself, above all else, that it is never too late to rise. The night settled around her like a soft blanket, and as she closed her eyes, she whispered with a peaceful smile, "Second Light, and still burning." Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?